All right, boys, I've been on Kisspeptin for just about 2 weeks, and I have a lot of interesting stuff to report to you all. Number one, I haven't, being on Kisspeptin, I haven't been on HCG for just about 2 weeks. And previous experiments without HCG for 2 weeks would have resulted in a lot less consistency in load size. Like the load size and consistency would kind of be a little bit abysmal. But without HCG and just with Kisspeptin, the load size and consistency of the material is kind of comparable to being on HCG, which I find really fucking interesting. I've also noticed better libido than with HCG. HCG is pretty libido enhancing via a lot of different mechanisms: intratesticular 5-alpha reductase, intratesticular aromatase to an extent, steroidogenesis, spermatogenesis. When the testicles are full, you generally have better libido and more of your innate inborn testosterone as well. But the libido that comes with Kisspeptin is different. It's more of kind of a masculine-like libido, and I'll explain that later in the video, compared with HCG, which is still kind of good libido, but again, HCG is very estrogenic. I've also noticed somewhat of a dose-dependent Viagra-like response, which I'm going to break down. We'll sort of speculate about what the mechanisms there are, but no question, acutely dosing Kisspeptin leads to better erections in the acute period dose dependently. I have noticed smaller testicular volume on Kisspeptin versus HCG, but they're not retracting as they would if I just remove HCG for 4 or 5 days and everything would start to retract upward. But overall, 2 weeks on Kisspeptin-10 instead of HCG, I like how I feel in a variety of ways, and I'm going to break it down in this video. Brother. All right, discount codes on product this week, guys. Look, Cortex Labs is a performance optimization and hormone consulting company for men. We've got a bunch of different products ranging from nootropics to coaching. Right now, the Cortex Nootropic Stack, a stack that I built, potent instant stimulant, is buy one, get one free. Code for that is cortexbogo, and you can find the code and the link in the description of this video. If you need to hire me, I got 3 slots left. TRT, hormone optimization, hormone consulting for men, dopamine restoration, libido, sexual function optimization, host of other topics. You can do that in under a minute at livecortex.com. Okay, so Kisspeptin-10 is the only kind of Kisspeptin analog that we have access to. You actually can get your hands on Kisspeptin-54, but it is very, very expensive. That's the Kisspeptin that's used in a majority of the studies, while some studies use Kisspeptin-10. Basically, Kisspeptin does a variety of different things that might be useful for people on TRT. Kisspeptin via binding to the Kis1R receptor, which by the way is like prevalent in many locations in your body, not just the brain. At the hypothalamus level, stimulates GnRH, specifically through stimulating gonadotropin releasing hormone neurons to release GnRH. Now, that cascade, as all of you know, I'm not going to beat a dead horse, just sends luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone down to the testicles, which produces sperm and testosterone. So what people have used it as, and what the clinics tried to do for a while when HCG wasn't available, is say, hey, Kisspeptin's a replacement for HCG, which by the way, it isn't. I can confidently conclude at this point, it is not, but it might even be better. The goal for me was, look, HCG is estrogenic, and I was running 500 IU every third day or so. And, it's good for libido, helps erectile quality to a degree. Sensation is very, very powerful, load size, all that, but it also kind of inhibits at various points based on pushing estrogen over range, or just kind of a bolus of estrogen, via aromatase activity in the testicles. It might mess with the erection quality at certain points, like in the kind of effect duration window. The goal was brain-borne LH and FSH. This is not something that you can do with human chorionic gonadotropin. You're just, that whole side of the brain which pumps out gonadotropins is completely shut down. And considering Kisspeptin-10 has a pretty short half-life, I mean, it's minutes, bro. But the LH and FSH pulses, specifically luteinizing hormone pulses, actually last longer if you study them. It's not just like the half-life of Kisspeptin is 4 minutes, so that means it's useless. People need to look a little more into the physiology of pulses of gonadotropins. So be careful not to become like victim of the Redditors that say Kisspeptin is useless because of the half-life. It's actually kind of like a misnomer. Right? It's somewhat of a non-educated, illogical argument, if you will. And also, based on this study titled "The Effects of Kisspeptin on Sexual Brain Processing in Penile Tumescence in Men with Hypoactive Sexual Desire Disorder," what they ultimately found with functional MRIs, just like scanning of the brain, is on Kisspeptin there were brain regions associated with sexual arousal and desire that were more activated under the presence of Kisspeptin. So those were kind of the goals for me. Just trialing it out, trying to see if I can switch from HCG, get less estrogenic side effects from HCG, reconnect the brain-borne LH-FSH pulses, see how it works. So my dose on this, as I explained in the previous video, is 170. It's 175 actually, to be exact, micrograms twice daily. That's 7 on an insulin syringe. It's a 5 milligram vial reconstituted with 2 milliliters of bacteriostatic water. So 175 micrograms twice daily, shallow intramuscular injections right in the delt. All right, let's talk about my experience. So number one, in the past, cycling off of HCG, which I've done experimentally for various reasons, I've actually done it to lower estrogen just rather than taking an AI at that time, and it worked. Testicular size, load size, libido, and erection quality all suffered when removing HCG, right? I've done this multiple times. I ran it for 3 straight weeks without HCG just to try to see, okay, would everything come back to a significant degree off of HCG? And it really did. That's why I think gonadotropin replacement is like critical, paramount, for men that are on TRT. Some men can get away with not having it, others are going to need it. What I found though is that testicular size on Kisspeptin, though has gone down, has not gone to the stage of like retracting into your body. That's one of the things that you'll find when the testicles shut down completely. What I found is even though testicular size has gone down, which you might expect from, a short half-life, a short set of pulses of luteinizing hormone and without HCG in the system, load size has actually gotten better. So the way that you could theoretically explain this is you've got your own inborn follicle stimulating hormone, which, you're not getting with HCG. You're just agonizing the receptors in the testicles with HCG. So with your own FSH, you probably have some better spermatogenesis activity taking place than with just HCG agonizing the receptors. Let's talk about libido. Okay, this is a really important one that I kind of just want to emphasize regarding the differences between HCG-induced libido and Kisspeptin-10 induced libido. It is different. The HCG libido is like normal libido, like it's fine, right? It's just kind of you get a sensation of like that brain genital connection, and you just kind of are into having sex. But since HCG is a tad estrogenic in that upregulation of aromatase activity in the testicles and converting more of your test to estrogen, I can tell you this, there's a difference between the libido that you get on higher estrogen and lower estrogen. That's really the distinction that I'm trying to make here. And the lower side estrogen libido is much more of a masculine libido, like you just kind of want to be more aggressive. You just, everything you see that might attract you, you're kind of into. It's a very strong, potent type of libido that, like, I don't typically watch porn, but it's like made me more interested in watching porn for some fucking reason. So I don't know, man, take from that what you will. It is a different libido than HCG libido. And that is likely due both to the, less estradiol, in the picture. Again, that lower estrogen libido, but still within range estrogen libido is very different than the higher estrogen and the libido that comes with that. It's a different fucking feeling, man. But also via KISS-R1 receptors in the brain and the cascade of signaling events, specifically in sexual arousal processing areas of the brain. There's something going on there that is making my libido very, very strong. All right, let's talk about erection quality. I have not been able to find a mechanism for this. I've looked all over the web for it, but the takeaway is Kisspeptin induces somewhat of a dose-dependent erectile response in me. It's almost like Viagra. And Cialis and Viagra are different. Like Viagra is like very fucking instant. Within 20 minutes, you gotta, with stimulation, you've got a pretty strong erection if the dose is right for you. But like post-dosing Kisspeptin, the entirety of my time on Kisspeptin, I've got harder erections, but post-dosing specifically, it just seems to have this very, very strong effect. Like I remember having like a 15-minute erection just the other night. Now, of course, men with hypoactive sexual disorder get better erections from using Kisspeptin, probably via the intratesticular testosterone. But what I am thinking is happening is that there's got to be something to the notion of your own inborn LH, FSH that is causing better erections. I cannot explain it. I've not found a mechanism, but if you think about erections, it's really like PDE5 optimization, like restoring PDE5 function, in the male penis, but as well as nitric oxide, right? So there must be some nitric oxide mediated mechanism by which, Kisspeptin induces erections in somewhat of a dose-dependent manner. Again, there's just something to be said about your own GnRH, pumping out when you're starved of that when you're on TRT. This is an interesting paper. I just kind of want to have you guys think about, just a little food for thought. It's titled Kisspeptin Resets the Hypothalamic GnRH Clock in Men, in which they basically go to describe that the pulse generator of gonadotropin releasing hormone, right? Your body is on various timers for various things. You got pulses of GnRH normally under normal natural conditions that cease, right? They effectively, the impulse stops after a certain period of time, and that's probably due to some sort of feedback mechanism. But if you had just had, basically what the study found is if you had just had a GnRH pulse, you could then take Kisspeptin and it would reset the gonadotropin releasing hormone pulse generator, right? In other words, instead of having to wait 120 minutes or whatever the next GnRH pulse would be, you get an instant pulse via Kisspeptin. So it resets kind of the biological clock of the GnRH pulse generator. Now, there's been a lot of speculation and kind of just extrapolation of these studies, somewhat incorrectly, regarding the potential for testicular degeneration with compounds like Kisspeptin. And what people are referring to is this study here, and there's a few other studies that mention it, which is that Kisspeptin-54, which is not what we're using in readily available peptide form, Kisspeptin-10 at high doses, acutely induces testicular degeneration in adult male rats via central mechanisms. And diving deep into both this paper and some of the surrounding literature, there is a mechanism for this, and the mechanism is effectively overstimulation of the HPG axis. Okay, so if you overstimulate the hypothalamus pituitary gonadal axis, then as you might imagine, there's going to be a downregulatory response intratesticularly from the LH-FSH pulses. But the same thing can actually be said with HEG if you're dosing it high enough. Here's a paper on rats, right? Downregulation of rat and human testicular HEG receptors by HEG. And they basically found that the binding sites, meaning the receptors, there were less of them after, high doses of HEG. There's also another paper, I'm not going to find it now, but you guys should if you're interested in that, continuous use of HEG at very high doses can also induce the same testicular degeneration that Kisspeptin-54 did at very high doses in rats. Now, the Kisspeptin-54 and theoretically the Kisspeptin-10 potential effect that might have negatively on the testicles is again due to overstimulation of the HPG axis. Luteinizing hormone pulses are very tightly controlled from GnRH and these biological clocks, these pulse generators in the brain. And if you're kind of superficially going and stimulating a bunch of pulses via high dose consistent throughout the day use of Kisspeptin-10, I'm dosing it twice a day. If you did that 7 times a day, at 100 micrograms or more, then maybe you'd run into testicular degeneration, but I have no indication in my personal experience that that's happening in me. So I just kind of wanted to clear that up for people. Again, the reason that happens is overstimulation of the hypothalamus pituitary gonadal axis via superficial mucking with GnRH in an excessive dose kind of way with Kisspeptin-54. Now, one of the things for us to look at is because people think Kisspeptin-10 is useless because it has a very short half-life. Kisspeptin-54 is 28 minutes. Kisspeptin-10 is probably something like 4 to 8 minutes, like if that. But again, as I alluded to in the beginning, luteinizing hormone pulses are longer, right? It's not just about the half-life of the drug. It's about what kind of pulses does it induce. And if you're injecting Kisspeptin twice daily, once in the morning, once in the evening, well, then you're going to ultimately have luteinizing hormone and FSH pulses that last longer. They last as long, likely, as they typically do under natural conditions. Now, this is a paper that's titled Episodic Luteinizing Hormone Secretion in Men, Pulse Analysis, Clinical Interpretation, and Physiologic Mechanisms, in which they basically say that measurement of the apparent half-life of luteinizing hormone after secretory spikes revealed half-times or half-life of 34 to 233 minutes. So, you could actually have luteinizing hormone spikes, pulsatile spikes, that are an hour, 2 hours, possibly even 3 hours after injection Kisspeptin-10. We don't know. That hasn't been measured. Now, I haven't run, just so people are curious about this, I haven't run luteinizing hormone yet, and I will either this week or next week. I've got some bloods that I haven't got last week. I think Quest right now is taking a long fucking time to get bloods, which is a bit of a pain in the ass, but I will run it and we will see. But ultimately, I've seen a lot of people do somewhat of discussions, and then I think even Vigorous Steve did some content regarding blood work, luteinizing hormone specifically on Kisspeptin. I think the important thing to understand though is that if you don't have, even if you don't have significant measurable luteinizing hormone levels in the blood, well, what time did you test and how long are those pulses? And it obviously will go back to baseline after those pulses, but you're getting still plausibly, right, very plausibly, a positive effect intratesticularly, and in terms of KISS1R receptor activation and all the brain cascades that have to do with sexual arousal from modest doses of Kisspeptin. Action on the testicles. Anecdotally, I'm having action on the testicles. There's no question. Load size is better than HCG, right? It hasn't gone downward when it normally would if I removed HCG. So there's some effect, whether we can measure luteinizing hormone or not. It may pulse, you get some LH pulse, you get some testicular action, you get some intratesticular testosterone production, you got some spermatogenesis, but then it ultimately goes away, and those levels aren't necessarily detectable in terms of luteinizing hormone thereafter. But you're still getting an effect from Kisspeptin. It's not just that the measurement of efficacy of Kisspeptin is luteinizing luteinizing hormone in the blood, because Kisspeptin has a lot of different mechanisms. Again, the brain processing side, specifically relative to the Kiss1R receptor, as well as action on the testicles, that stuff still happens. That's my contention, at least. Now, one thing that I did want to note, because it's not all like gravy and fucking ice cream, is that, yeah, testicular size is smaller. Again, not retracting, but smaller than on HCG. So if that's a problem for men, and I may even consider this just a fucking experiment, like maybe bringing in ultra low dose HCG, 50 IU every other day or something, which is just a micro amount of HCG, but will still cause good kind of testicular size, and even probably improve semen parameters, sperm parameters, fertility parameters, all that kind of stuff might actually be useful. And I may run that in the future. I just want to give it time and see I get actual retraction, or if I've got testicular size that just becomes somewhat problematic cosmetically or something for me. And then at that point, I might run a little bit of low dose HCG with it. I just don't know. But interestingly, there was a study done on Kisspeptin-54, which shows that Kisspeptin receptors are present in the testes, and Kisspeptin-54 has been observed to significantly increase HCG stimulated testosterone response in monkeys, consistent with the direct testicular action. So again, as we discussed before, how relevant is that to humans? Probably relevant to a significant degree. This is one of the reasons that we use monkeys for testing. People always like to say, well, that was in a rat study. Well, the anatomical, physiological, and genetic similarities between rats and humans is specifically why scientists way fucking smarter than you are using rats and monkeys to tests. So, but what this ultimately means is that, you could run a lower dose of HCG, not get as much of that estrogenic stimulation that HCG tends to induce, which we all know that it does that, and have a synergy between Kisspeptin and HCG in terms of intratesticular testosterone stimulation. Kisspeptin enhances the HCG-induced testosterone stimulation. And so in that regard, you kind of maybe, I mean, this is just my position at this point, right? This could change. Maybe get to have your cake and eat it too, meaning have good testicular volume with a little bit of HCG, but not the estrogenic side effects. And the Kisspeptin in the regimen as well, you got that brain-born libido, and in my case and some other anecdotes I found on the web, kind of a dose-dependent Viagra-like erectile response. What's the final verdict on Kisspeptin-10? I don't have one. And I know that sucks to hear, brother. But look, I need more time experimenting with it. I'm just about 2 weeks on 175 micrograms twice daily. So I'm just going to continue running it. Does sensation get worse? Because it hasn't so far, which it would if HCG wasn't in the picture, and it's not in the picture anymore because Kisspeptin is. Sensation's actually really fucking good. Again, libido is crazy. I got a dose-dependent erectile response, and that kind of just lasts all day. Just erections are better. It's almost like Viagra. I don't know if, how long I'll continue dosing it, but I'm going to continue dosing it, right? I will keep you guys posted if something changes and I find out, okay, maybe gonadorelin via some more GnRH stimulation or agonism rather might be better for this case to avoid the estrogenic side effects of the HCG, then who knows? I've got gonadorelin, so maybe I'll run that. I need more time. Will I ever go back to HCG? Possibly. Again, I'm considering using small doses of HCG just to get a little bit of that testicular size back, but while still avoiding some of the estrogenic side effects. Will I completely switch back to HCG? Possibly. Right now, I don't want to, and it doesn't seem like that's going to benefit me in some significant way to just go back to high dose HCG. So we will see. The book is still open. This is merely just a chapter, and I will keep you guys posted. All right, if you guys need to hire me for coaching, I got 3 slots open right now. Look, this is full-on one-on-one hands-on biohacking coaching with me. We do hormone consulting for men largely, but also neurotransmitter optimization, dopamine restoration, libido, sexual optimization for men. You can hire me in under a minute at livecortex.com. There's 3 slots open for 1 month, 3 month, 6 month, or 1 year hands-on one-on-one packages with me, where I'm engineering your entire protocol, right, for specific goals and particular outcomes. Hire me livecortex.com. Cortex Stack, only for another couple days. I've got, maybe 70 bottles left to move at buy one, get one free. Buy one, get one free. Best deal ever on a very, very potent, instant, very popular stimulant nootropic that I built personally. The code for that is cortexbogo. You can find the code and the links for all of our products as well as the Cortex Stack down in the description of this video. All right, brother. It's been epic hanging out with you. I hope you have a great day. I hope you have a great rest of your week. Live stream coming Saturday, 9 a.m. Eastern time or so. So look forward to that. Make sure you have notifications on for the channel. Comment in the comment section if you have experience with Kisspeptin-10, or if you have just something to say about it, whatever it is. Let's get the discussion lively. If you have nothing to say whatsoever, just punch in my cat's name in the comment section, which is Max Ballo, MAXXBALLOW. All right, rock on, kick ass, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.